The following slides will help you to annotate and analyse War Photographer by Carol and Duffy. Amongst these slides, you will find a combination of questions, YouTube clips, and versions of the poem itself. To start off with, I really just want you to think about what you already think about when you think about someone whose job it is to be a war photographer. And the way I would like you to do that is to bullet point what you think that would involve. So, for example, you will see on this slide there are a list of questions. The first one says, where do you think a war photographer would work? It's fairly obvious given the title of their job, but you may also think of other international events or catastrophic situations that might involve a similar kind of content to the photographs we would expect a war photographer to take. Secondly, where would the public see a war photographer's work? Where would be the most likely place that you would see those pictures? Thirdly, have you seen footage of war through the media before? If so, which form of media did it come from? Have you seen footage of war on the television? Have you seen it in magazines? Have you seen it in newspapers? So just bullet point as many as you can think of. And based on the ones that you can remember, that leads us quite nicely on to question 4. You know, when you think back to those photographs, can you think about the geographical regions that they were based upon? For example, in recent years, we've probably seen quite a lot of footage from the Middle East. Number 5, why do you think photographers take, in particular war photographers, take these pictures? It can't just be to make money. Obviously, it's their job, so they get an income from it. But to put yourself in the situations that they're having to put themselves in, it's probably the case that it's not just driven by financial gain. So if you can think of any reasons why you think they might want to put themselves in what are potentially dangerous situations to get those pictures. And then lastly, do you think it would be an easy job to do? And if you can just think about why you might think it wouldn't be so easy, that would be quite helpful at this point as well. Thank you very much. In this slide, you'll see we have a YouTube clip which contains an interview with Don McCullin. Some of you won't know who Don McCullin is, but he's a very well-known war photographer and has taken pictures all around the world on the sites of various conflicts and famines and really kind of catastrophic kind of human events that have happened around the world. As a result of that, some of the content that you're about to see could be considered or is considered quite distressing in nature. Unfortunately, it's the topic of the poem, and to fully understand the content of the poem and the real meaning of the poem, you have to have some idea of the kinds of images that are referred to in the poem. Once you've listened to the interview, what I would like you to do is to go back to the bullet points that you were making in response to the questions on the previous slide and just see if there's anything you want to add to them, or if maybe your views in terms of some of your answers have changed in any way given what you've heard from this interview. Over the next few slides, I'll basically just read through the poem with you. So, War Photographer by Carol and Duffy. Stanza 1. In his dark room, he is finally alone, with spools of suffering set out in ordered rows. The only light is red and softly glows, as though this were a church, and he a priest preparing to intone a mass. Belfast, Beirut, Phnom Penh, all flesh is grass. Stanza 2. He has a job to do. Solutions slop in trays beneath his hands, which did not tremble then, though seem to now. Rural England, home again to ordinary pain, which simple weather can dispel, to fields which don't explode beneath the feet of running children in a nightmare heat. Stanza 3. Something is happening. A stranger's features faintly start to twist before his eyes, a half-formed ghost. He remembers the cries of this man's wife, how he sought approval without words to do what someone must, and how the blood stained into foreign dust. Stanza 4. 100 agonies in black and white, from which his editor will pick out 5 or 6 for Sunday supplement. The reader's eyeballs prick with tears between the bath and pre-lunch beers. From the aeroplane he stares impassively at where he earns his living, and they do not care. It is now time to start analysing the poem. Now, to do this, you will need to click on the YouTube clip that is on this slide, and you will also need to print a copy of the poem. You will find a Word document with the poem on it on your team's page or on the SharePoint. Given the circumstances, if you have the paper and resources available, it might be helpful to print one stanza on each sheet of paper just by copying and pasting. This will enable you to have more room to include your analysis round about the poem. Now that you've finished the analysis of War Photographer, it's time to start thinking about how we can use that analysis to make links with the other poems that you have studied. The easiest way to do this is to think firstly about the themes that have been covered. If we start with conflict, we can think about how that is most obviously presented in War Photographer through the idea of war. However, there is also an internal conflict within the photographer himself. Is it always easy for him to take the photographs? Why does he take those photographs? Is there perhaps a conflict between his reasons for taking the photographs and how he feels at times when he takes them? Also, in Mrs. Midas, is there any sense of conflict within her in terms of her feelings towards her husband, particularly towards the end of the poem? Also, in Valentine, is there any conflict in terms of the way love is presented in that poem? Are there 2 different versions of love perhaps being shown in that poem? You could maybe make notes in relation to that too. Then we come on to the theme of isolation. Where is the war photographer at the start of the poem? In what ways is he isolated? Is this purely a physical isolation, or is he isolated in any other way? For example, think about the psychological isolation that he might experience. Do you think it is easy for him to share his experiences, and if not, why? In Mrs. Midas, who becomes isolated over the course of the poem? What causes that isolation? In Valentine as well, is love always a positive experience? Can it sometimes cause a sense of isolation? Can that sense of isolation then lead us to behave in particular ways? So a lot to think about in terms of tying all these ideas together. Likewise, if you can have a wee think about the themes of indifference and apathy, for example, people not caring, and think about how that might apply to each of the poems as well. And lastly, the theme of loss.